but I think the West needs to be quite careful here. In Parliament this afternoon we were debating British arms sales around the world. Okay. Until March of this year, Britain was selling arms to Libya, as were all the other countries, and so I think there has to be some understanding of the relationship in the future.
All right, and we also know that NATO had said that its military intervention will not end with the capture or the death of the colonel. How long do you think NATO will remain in Libya, and what exactly will their pretext be at this time, now that the scenario has changed?
I see no purpose or point in NATO remaining involved in Libya at all in the future. What the basis of the NATO involvement was United Nations Security Council 1973, which authorised a no-fly zone. This seems to have been very liberally interpreted by NATO, with a huge bombing campaign which has hit a great many targets. There can be no justification for continuing a NATO operation there. Surely it's now a matter for the Libyan people to work out their future. That, after all, is what NATO claimed the intervention was about. I just wonder if it isn't also something to do with oil and arms and sales in the future.
Okay, and just going back to how actually Gaddafi was killed or had died. We have been looking at the footage. It seemed like he was alive. It seemed like he had died there. But we also know that NATO had confirmed that it bombed a loyalist convoy fleeing Sirte with Gaddafi supposedly in one of the vehicles there. Again, different scenarios playing out. Would it be convenient, though, to write the colonel's death off as collateral damage?
It would be extremely convenient to do that. I think the uncomfortable problem for that is that there is this footage of him apparently in the back of a truck in the town, surrounded by a very angry mob, and the assumption, I guess, is that he was killed by this mob sometime shortly after that. The convoy that was fleeing, I don't know who was in that or what that was about, but then the TNC did claim last week that there was a convoy in the desert that included Gaddafi in it. Now maybe their intelligence was wrong at that point, but he has been killed, that is clear, and he has been killed by a mob. That also seems to be the case, and there's been no due process. Now I hope the other people that have been taken prisoner, there will be a due process. That, after all, has to be the example in any stable democratic society.
All right, just very quickly, now that essentially, again, the regime is gone, you have the NTC at the forefront, are you hopeful that they can actually lead Libya towards what they would call towards a democratic society?
The statements they've made are that that's what they intend to do, and they have an elected government and have a normal democratic society. They have very great tensions within the TNC. There are very many competing elements within the TNC and differing political philosophies. I hope those are played out in a democratic way and debated in a democratic way, and a solution is acceptable to all, and an inclusion is offered to all those who were former members and supporters of the government, as well as those that were opposed to it. That has to be the way forward of reunification. Otherwise, the alternative is some ghastly descent into war with all the many armaments that there are there already in Libya.
Okay, thanks very much for your thoughts there. Talking to us live from London, British MP Jeremy Corbyn. Thanks very much again. All right, well, let's cross live to the U.S. Capitol now for more analysis from the director of the Anti-War Answer Coalition, Brian Becker. Mr. Becker, well, Western leaders are calling the killing of Gaddafi a success, and again, the footage of the colonel's body has gone viral on mainstream media. Is Gaddafi's death really a positive outcome for Libya?
No, I think it's a terrible crime, in fact. I think this is the act of the NATO powers, the United States, Britain, and France, the former colonizers and enslavers of Africa, who have carried out regime change in many countries, Lumumba in the Congo, Mossadegh in Iran, Milosevic in Yugoslavia, Noriega in Panama, Saddam in Iraq. They've done it again. They've taken out the leader and replaced him with a new government, which will be basically a NATO client regime. And I think it's a great tragedy for the people of Libya.
Okay, well, looking at, again, those the videos and the stills that we have been seeing, there are so many of them now running repeatedly on the mainstream media, when we haven't been shown a single one of Osama bin Laden, whose killing was also heralded by the West. Why the difference in those two situations?
Well, I think we know in the case of Osama bin Laden, the United States had its own reasons. It was fighting not only against Osama bin Laden, but against the Pakistan military, in fact. We don't really know what happened with Osama bin Laden. Presumably he's dead. Why this video has gone viral, it's possible that it's just gone viral. But Muammar Gaddafi would be alive today for one reason, except for one reason, and that is the NATO intervention, the NATO bombing of Sirte, the NATO bombing of cities in complete defiance of their own resolution 1973, that said that they were entering Libya just to protect civilians. It's been clear from the outset that they're killing civilians, killing anybody who stands in the way of the real objective of the operation, which is to carry out regime change.
Okay, as now that the leader of Libya is now the NTC, the recognized authority there, some of them were ex-Gaddafi loyalists, and there have been questions raised about their past affiliations. Can they be trusted to lead the country forward?
Well, I just want to put it into perspective again. I don't think the NTC really is the force in Libya. It is there for the time being, at least. It may be a transitional regime. The real power in Libya today is the United States, Britain, and France, the NATO countries that carried out the regime change. The U.S. generals and admirals will announce, as they are starting to, that they have plans for NATO to remain in Libya as part of the transition to help the country recover, to regain stability, etc. We see a NATO takeover of a country that has the largest oil reserves in the entire African continent, the 9th largest oil reserves in the world. This is a coup d'etat by Western powers against an oil-rich African country.
Okay, they are a transitional government, as you said. So at the end of this transitional period, who is going to be sitting there?
Well, I think we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know with certainty, of course, but we know that the coalition is eclectic. It's not homogeneous. It's got a lot of internal tensions. But ultimately, again, as I said, that whatever government comes to power in Tripoli and in Benghazi, it will do so only if it has the favor, the support of the British, the French, and the Americans. So without knowing the personalities, we know the big picture that the foreign occupiers, the foreign invaders, the foreign bombers who carried out this regime change will ultimately be the big player in the new Libya.
Okay, now let's talk about quickly the question of Libyan oil. How do you see it playing out? Who is going to get what, and how much of the oil reserves of the country is going to go to which country? What do you think is going to happen in that playing out?
I think it's quite clear, and in the machinations of this operation, that the NTC set up shop with Washington publicity firms and lobbying groups, that they were hosting meetings with the major Italian, French, British, and American oil companies, even back as early as June in Washington, D.C. I think there will be a reorganization of Libyan oil. The big recipients, the big winners here will be the major Western oil companies whose airplanes bombed Libya for the past 7 or 8 months. I think Russia, and I think China, and I think others in the international oil world will be basically shoved out because of their past association with Gaddafi. This is a reorganization of a very important oil market. That's what we're witnessing.
All right. Well, thanks very much for your thoughts there. Live from the U.S. Capitol, Director of the Anti-War Answer Coalition, Brian Becker. Thanks again. Well, of course, he would like to know what you think about the death of Colonel Gaddafi. And today we're asking you, with Gaddafi dead, what happens to Libya now? And so far, the most popular response is west-guarded oil fields surrounded by chaos will emerge. And years of painful and slow recovery comes second. And some of you say the colonel's death will lead to a green zone in Tripoli and tribal control elsewhere. And only 4% say election, reforms, and prosperity. Do head to RT.com and cast your vote.